Israel is the world's only Jewish country, whereas Palestine is not a country, but rather a de facto state and a territory which Palestinians considered as a state. Palestinians are the Arab Muslims population of the area that Israel now controls. The Romans gave the name Palestine when they conquered it from the Jews nearly 2000 years ago. Muslim Arab Empire later threw out the Roman Empire around 7th century. During World War I, Ottoman Empire, which was a Muslim empire, was defeated and they were stripped of their colony. Israel-Palestine had been under Ottoman Empire for centuries. British then control over that region. Jews were all escaping from one place to another in search of a safe place for centuries. They were all living in different places in scattered form all around the world. Based on the attacks on Jews throughout history, for centuries, many Jews argued that the only way to escape persecution, discrimination, and genocides was to create a Jewish state, especially in Palestine, an area where Jews lived historically and location of an ancient Israel. The movement to try to get Jews returned to Palestine to live and establish their own society is known as Zionism. Zionism believes Judaism is not just religion, but deserves a nation of its own. During World War I in 1917, the Great Britain promised the Jews that they will give a permanent home if Jewish people support British to win the war. In 1917, in the Balfour Declaration, Great Britain announced establishing a national home for Jewish people in Palestine. At the same time, Great Britain also supported the Great Arab Revolt against the Ottoman Empire and promised their independence in the liberated land that is Israel. After the World War I, the Ottoman Empire falls and the Palestine was controlled by Britain and the whole area was known as Palestine. Palestine were ruled by Arab Muslims for more than 1000 years and the majority of population was Arab Muslim. They believed that Palestine should be ruled by another Arab Muslims. Jews argued that the land originally belongs to Jews. The land of Jerusalem is very important to Jewish people and Jews considered Palestine their homeland before the Arab Muslim got there. The British allowed the Jewish immigration at first. Around 1920s and 1930s, more and more Jews moved to Palestine. The local Arabs in Palestine grew a hate towards Jews as a threat to their homeland. Jewish and Arab tension increases. By 1930s, the British began limiting Jewish immigration. In response, the Jewish militants formed to fight both the local Muslim Arab and to resist British rule. World War II breaks out. 6 million Jews were killed by Nazi Germany. During and after the Holocaust, many Jews returned to Palestine and embraced Zionism, a movement for the creation of a Jewish state that emerged in the 19th century in Europe. On November 29, 1947, the United Nations Assembly recommends partitioning of Palestine into an Arab state, a Jewish state, and the city of Jerusalem, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians all have holy sites was declared as an international zone. The plan was to give Jews a state and to establish Palestinian independence. The Jews accepted the plan but rejected by Palestinian Arabs, followed by a civil war between the two communities. On May 14, 1948, Jewish leaders announced the creation of a state of Israel, which immediately caused a war with neighboring Arab countries. David Ben-Gurion, one of the leading promoters of a Jewish nation-state, was given the title of Prime Minister. In 1950, Israel passed a law that gives Jews the right to come and live in Israel and to gain Israeli citizenship. But Arab Muslims throughout the world saw the UN plan as just more European colonialism trying to steal their land. Many of the Arab countries, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan, declared war on Israel. The new state of Israel won the war, but in the process, they pushed well back their borders, taking the western half of Jerusalem and much of the land that has been to be a part of Palestine. Because of the war in 1948, around 700,000 Palestinians lost their home, and they started a huge refugee crisis that is still around till date. At the end of the war, Israel controlled all the territory except for Gaza, which Egypt controlled, and the West Bank, where Jordan controlled. This was the beginning of decades-long Arab-Israel conflict. During this period, many Jews of the Arab countries fled or were expelled, arriving in Israel. In 1967, Israel and the neighboring countries fought Six-Day War. When it ended, Israel captured Golan Heights of Syria and the West Bank from Jordan, and both Gaza and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and now occupying all Palestinian territories, including all of Jerusalem and its holy sites. Israel triples its total area. This left Israelis responsible for governing the Palestinians. In 1978, under Camp David Accords, Sinai was returned to Egypt, and Egypt recognized State of Israel as a country. This decision was so controversial that the president of Egypt at that time, President Anwar Sadat, was assassinated. Slowly, most Arab states make peace with Israel, but Palestine Liberation Organization carries on struggle for independent Palestine using both political and terror tactics, which was formed in 1964. Then the first intifada occurs in 1987. Intifada in Arabic means uprising. There was a huge protest boycotting Israeli goods. There were bombing where 100 Jews and 1,000 Palestinians were killed. The rise of Hamas, which were more nationalist and extremist, took place. Then, Israelis were ready to talk, and Oslo Accord in 1993 took place. That gives recognition of the State of Israel by Palestine Liberation Organization and the recognition of Palestine Liberation Organization as a representative of Palestine people by Israel. This peace talk failed, and Second Intifada took place in 2000, which was more violent and killed 1,000 Jews and 3,200 Palestinians. There were lots of bombing of buses and terrorist attacks. Israelis forces from Gaza withdrew in 2005. Hamas took over Gaza, and after that, Israel started to blockade Gaza. Israelis sees Hamas as a terrorist organization, and Hamas received all the weapons from all over the world, and to stop the transportation of weapons, Israel did a blockade. This blockade put the Gaza into economic crisis. As a retaliation, Hamas then launches rockets into Israel, but was stopped by Israel by its Iron Dome that stopped any kind of missile attack. There have been 3 wars between Hamas and Israel in 2008, 2012, and 2014. Thousands of people were killed. The major issues that is hampering the peace talk between Israel and Palestine is the issue of Jerusalem, which is the holy site for Jews, Muslim, and Christian. For Jews, it is the holiest place and the ancestral and spiritual homeland of Jewish people. For Muslim, it is the third holiest place after Mecca and Medina. Prophet Muhammad visited the city on a nocturnal. For Christian, Jesus Christ was crucified here. The east part of the Jerusalem is populated with Muslim Arab, west part by Jewish population. In between this population is the holy shrines. Israel controls the city and restricts access to the sites from time to time. Israel says that its Jerusalem is its capital, but not internationally accepted as its capital as it is a disputed territory. The first Jewish temple and the second temple, which was later destroyed, was said to be here at the Dome of the Rock. Al-Aqsa Mosque, located in the old city of Jerusalem, is the third holiest site in Islam. Muslim believes that Muhammad was transported from the Great Mosque of Mecca to Al-Aqsa during the night journey. That's it for the Israel and Palestine conflict. Thank you.